Hey everyone, it's that guy in Hutch, Jason Probst, and you're listening to That Podcast in Hutch. Today I have with me a pretty interesting character that I learned about through Talk 20. And if you haven't done Talk 20 Hutch, you should. These happen twice a year, usually in January and June. And it's really an interesting thing where we find ordinary people in the community doing kind of extraordinary things and give them a few minutes to talk about it. And it's called Talk 20 because they talk for 20 seconds on 20 slides, and that's how they tell their story. But one person was this gal named Luci Hernandez, and she goes by Lucky Luci. And she talked about how she moved here from California and with her husband, and they were very excited to start a new life here. And then life kind of took a turn, as it does sometimes. She ends up divorced and on her own in this house that they were rehabbing, and she didn't know exactly what to do next. So she just kept on rehabbing the house on her own. And now it's kind of turned into I think you'll hear that it's turned into kind of a connection to her. Like she kind of views the house as rebuilding her as well as the house. And it's really remarkable to see and listen to her passion about this and what she's done. And I think you'll find this episode really interesting and kind of lighthearted, but also with some serious undertones to it too, because life sometimes doesn't work the way we want it to work or the way we dreamed it might work. And in this case, and I think in many cases that we don't always hear about, people just have to kind of pick up the pieces and keep moving on. And that's what you'll hear in this story today. And I hope you'll be as inspired as I was. Well, thanks for coming in today.
Yes.
I have with me today Lucky Luci, and the way I came to know about her is through Talk 20. If you've never been to Talk 20, you should definitely check it out. It's a really, we do it twice a year, usually in January and June at the library, and it's really good. But in this story, you talked about this house that you've worked on, and that it's basically a construction zone that you're living in and working in and on site. And I want to talk a little bit about that, but I kind of want to walk through the story a little bit. But I want to give you a little bit of chance to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about who you are before we get into your story.
All right. Yeah. I am Lucky Luci, and basically I'm just Luci. I moved out here from California about just under 2 years ago with my newlywed husband at the time, and we traveled all across country. We went from California to Maine and back, and on our way here we found this house that my mom she kind of heavily suggested that we buy.
Yeah.
And of course I fell in love with the town of Hutch anyways. And this house was just a beautiful project for us. So we bought it and went to California, grabbed our things, and came right back over here. And that's what started this whole journey.
The whole journey.
The whole journey.
So you were in, what part of California were you in?
The Bay Area, California.
In San Francisco?
San Francisco Bay Area, yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you had lived all the time?
Yeah.
So you had, like, that had been your home, right?
Yeah. I left everything to come out here. All my friends and family. I did have a really close-knit family out there, and I left it all for just to come out here
and take a chance on something, right?
To start a whole new life.
Yeah.
You know, I was newly married, and I was looking forward to a slower pace than what California had, you know. So this was just a perfect place to just start a calmer life.
And so, and we'll get into this a little bit, but that didn't exactly happen though, did it?
No, it didn't. It was a disaster.
So, well, let's talk about that a little bit. And you and I got to talk a little bit beforehand, but you almost immediately, or maybe even before, I might not know this part of the story, but when you came out here, things kind of in your marriage went off the rails pretty quickly, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I actually married a functioning heroin addict, and I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong, except for because he was functioning, But when we moved out here, he really fell into the meth and fentanyl epidemic, and the drugs hit hard and quickly. He just took off with them. And so the relationship that we had, there was a lot of abandonment, there was a lot of abuse, and it all happened quickly. Like, as soon as he picked up those drugs, everything just went chaotic.
So I want to explore this a little bit. When you're in California, he's actively using heroin there. But some of the problems that you encountered didn't happen until you were here.
No, a lot of the side effects were because of the methamphetamines.
Okay.
That really changed his character.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. I'm curious what a functioning heroin addict looks like. I mean, did he work? Did he maintain a relationship with you? We hear the term functioning alcoholic all the time, and I can kind of picture what that looks like. I have no frame of reference for what a functioning heroin addict looks like.
A functioning heroin addict, he used heroin, but he did have a job. I met him at work originally. We had a normal relationship. We went on dates. It was just a normal relationship with the addition of him using and him taking a lot of naps. Heroin is a downer, so
it makes you had to make him want to sleep and
yeah. But it wasn't enough for me to get scared off by it because it didn't hold us back from living the life that I wanted to live or that we wanted to live together.
So this isn't clearly is not the situation you have where you the typical image of somebody shooting up on the street and can't even get up and take care of themselves. It's way different than that.
It's way different. Yeah. And we were in Oakland, California at the time where they have an open drug market. Doing things like heroin and crack were so normal and normalized. People were doing it and functioning all the time.
Yeah.
They're still out there doing it that.
So then you decide to come here and you go to Maine. Are you doing that for work or are you doing that for fun?
It was just a honeymoon trip.
Okay.
We didn't expect to stop in Kansas and live here, but.
Yeah, but you ended up doing that. You went to Maine and then you came back and you're like, hey, let's call this home. You had a chance on a house, right?
Yes, we did.
But the house, did it need some work?
It needed all the work. Everything was wrong with it. It needed new electrical. It didn't have any electrical, no plumbing, nothing at all. The first thing that we actually did to that house is buy a dumpster and just scrape everything out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you and your husband at the time, I think you were looking forward to this adventure, right?
Yes. And actually, when we got out here, we had the money to do it. We came out here with about $80,000 for all the renovations.
Uh-huh.
But quickly, because of him picking up the meth addiction and the fentanyl addiction, that $80,000 was gone within the first 4 months of moving out here.
Yeah.
That was just it. That got burned up, and very little of it actually went towards the house.
So I want to talk about that and explore that a little bit. You're living with someone who, as you talked previously, had been fine with being functional with doing heroin, but you get out here and then gets into the meth and the fentanyl. When do you start to see that this is a problem?
So this was actually difficult for me because on my end, I have bipolar 1 disorder with manic depressive episodes. Coming out here was very stressful for me as far as the transition goes, just with my mental health. And so I had actually ended up at the 3rd floor with the 3rd floor at Horizons. Because I had a little bit of a psychotic break, I guess we'll say, or it was an episode.
Okay.
And I remember actually that day of leaving the hospital, he picked me up, and that's when he had picked up meth. So I was not in a healthy mind state already. Right. I was really struggling with my own stability. So with me struggling and him pulling back out of our relationship, he was so lost in drugs, and I was grasping at him for help. and not getting that help that I was so used to from him, everything just changed.
Yeah.
And it was
So he's pulling away, you're
falling apart.
And so that the structure of your marriage is kind of just not there anymore.
Yeah, it was awful. And for me on my end, my mental health was so bad. I remember I was so depressed. Like I would not want to leave our trailer. I wouldn't. And I was stressed out too with the whole situation, all these drugs, all these new people coming in that I couldn't trust, like they were stealing things. And, it was just such a chaotic environment, and I shut down and I just got really, really sick. And to the point within those 4 months, I think I had 3 suicide attempts.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that was within your first 4 months of being here in Hutchinson. Yeah. And so it went down that fast, right?
Yeah.
How did you kind of get through that? So you had 3, did you say 3 suicide attempts?
Yes, I had three suicide attempts.
And can I ask a little bit about that?
Absolutely. For me, it was kind of, in my head, I was convinced it was a little more poetic because I don't use, I'm not an addict, but for my suicide attempts, I did use fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And because it was so available, and I was seeing my husband destroy himself.
Yeah.
And there was no way to fix that. And so I wanted to die the way that I saw my husband slowly killing himself. So, all 3 attempts were me taking what they call blues out here, putting them in a syringe and attempting to die.
Was part of that tied to, like, you had hung your whole life maybe at that point on your marriage, your brand new marriage, your brand new house, this new adventure, and you're watching that slide away, and maybe at some level you're like, I don't know how I survived this?
Exactly. I left my whole entire family, all my friends, everything back home. And I invested everything that I had emotionally into this man.
Yeah.
I have no kids of my own, And so this was just me and him. And it was supposed to be us against the world.
Yeah.
And without him, I was lost. And I had no hope.
Yeah.
I figured, like, what's the point in all of it? I'm not getting him back. I'm slowly losing him. There was basically in my head, my whole world shrunk down to me living in this trailer.
Yeah.
That was my whole world, and it was falling apart. And I had no control over putting anything back together. Mm-hmm. I was just letting it fall apart.
And feeling pretty helpless and all of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what happened? Because to fast forward to your story today is quite a bit different.
Yes.
So I want to try to understand how you moved from that point where you're so low that you just feel the whole world is caving in on you and that there's no hope of getting out of that, to where you are today. What do you do, or what happens to kind of make that transition?
So actually what inevitably happened was, my relationship with my husband became very abusive. I had bruises on my body that I was not proud of. It was just, it got really out of hand, and he got really controlling, and but because he was spiraling out of control, eventually it got to a point where I had to call the cops. Mm-hmm. He was sitting there telling me that he was going to light the trailer on fire once I fall asleep. Like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
Even in my chaos, like, there's got to be a line drawn somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it seems like setting you on fire is a good place to draw a line.
Right. And so the cops were called, and so he went to jail. And my turning point was the second he was gone.
Yeah.
When he was gone, it was just me.
Yeah.
That's it. Me in this broken house. I like to say this house was as broken as I am. We were just sitting there both just broken, not doing nothing. But that's where the journey started, because then it was kind of like, here I am at the very bottom, and it's up to me on how I rebuild myself and how I build this house. How am I going to do it?
So I'm curious too about how in that moment you kind of look at the house as, well, maybe, it's you and the house, and that's all you have. And previous to this, you had been worried about your life in this trailer that's on the side of the house and your husband, which you had invested so much emotional and financial and physical energy into. And that's falling apart. So your worst fear that you had has come true.
Yeah.
How do you, and you realize it's just you, so you lost the thing you were worried about. How did you, in your mind, change that thinking to being like, I'm losing, to like building back to something?
I think it started because maybe I'm slightly a little codependent, but it really started with the house. I looked at the house and I said, I've got to fix this house. This is all I have left. This is the only thing I have left to take care of. Mm-hmm. And there's something about me, that stubbornness, that drive, where I looked at that house and I said, that house deserves to be a home.
Yeah.
And I will make it a home. Even, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but something, I guess, just that attachment just happened right off the bat.
Yeah.
And that's also when I started making YouTube videos of the process.
And you had told me, your early YouTube videos, though, weren't necessarily just to showcase what you were doing on the home. You had told me earlier that they were kind of a means to provide some connection to the outside world for you.
Absolutely. For me, it started because I think there's kind of several reasons that tied into place. One, all my family's out in California. So I wanted to show them the house and what I'm up to. But most importantly, I have bipolar. This is something that's not going to go away. And the symptoms of that, living with bipolar, is not an easy thing to do. And I wanted to show kind of my struggle. Inevitably, because I've always had suicidal tendencies, I'm afraid that one day I will kill myself, that my bipolar will win. And I want my voice to be heard. And if I'm dead, what can I do to carry the positive, that positive message on? And so those videos was me kind of breaking down in a very raw form and saying, this is who I am. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm facing. Watch me.
Yeah.
Let's see how far I can go with it and have it documented, because I don't know if tomorrow I won't survive.
Mm-hmm. Can you, I'm going to take a detour here for a second. Can you help me and anybody who doesn't have bipolar understand what it's like, or help try? I know it's got to be hard. But what happens in your mind? How do I understand what it means to live with bipolar disorder?
Well, I can only speak for myself, because, there's different variants, I guess, of bipolar. Mm-hmm. For me, I have kind of two polar opposites, right? You have happy and sad, happy and depressed. So I have a lot of these manic days, which I love and embrace about myself, where I'm super energetic, I'm really happy, I'm very positive. But then I will have days where I'm sad, I'm depressed. The thing is it's like whatever you're feeling is intensified. Mm-hmm. So what a normal happy day would be for you, for me, that feeling might be intensified times 10. Yeah. So my happiness is even more happy, super excited. Exuberant. Yeah. And I don't mind that. But the downfall is my depressed side, because my sadness isn't just, oh, this is a bad day. Oh, I'm sad. it reaches further down. That's where the suicidal thoughts come into play. And it's, for me, it's a chemical imbalance. So sometimes it's triggered by situational things. But then there's days where I have no reason to be sad, but I feel sad. And that's trying to figure out a balance of how to live with that and how to cope with it. Because what I've learned is that me having bipolar, it's not going to go away. There's no miracle cure for being bipolar. It's trying to figure out the best way that I can handle those moments so that I can live, not a regular life, but I can live a life and not worry about me always wanting to kill myself.
And so was the YouTube video kind of a way to manage that a little bit, to putting the YouTube videos out?
Maybe in a sense, yeah, kind of a good way to track how I'm doing emotionally. I think now it definitely is, because I can look back at how, what I was going through and how I was coping with it. Yeah.
So what other things do you do when you're in those lows and your mind is turning what for most people would be a just normal bad day into I should probably get out of this life kind of day? How do you have tools that you use to kind of keep that from bottoming out?
Absolutely.
What do you do?
Actually, so I call it a toolbox. Everybody's got a toolbox on how they cope with things. For me, what's in my toolbox? I have a lot of support. I have people that I can call. I have meetings that I go to. That house for me is my biggest tool because that's where I can allow myself to feel crazy. When I go outside and I see people, like, I might not feel like I fit in all the time, because I do. I stick out like a sore thumb, I have a certain style. But my home is my safe space. And working on that home, I can pour whatever emotion that I'm feeling into it. And not be ashamed of it.
And that's you. And you get to, and you said there's a connection between you and the home, and you said feel like the home is just, you are just as broken as the home, or the home's just as broken as you. And so is there kind of like a parallel between working on the home and yourself also?
Absolutely. I have this strong feeling that me and the home are we're like best buds. Like, we are intertwined, because it seems like whatever I'm working on in the house, it's usually symbolic of what I'm actually going through in life. There's a lot of things that happen, like working on the floor, and sometimes we have really bad days. We, as in me in the house, where I'm like cursing at floor joists, and I get really frustrated, and then the house will it'll be difficult back, we kind of fight with each other, and then there are these beautiful moments where things come together, and the drywall fits just right or something, and it just all works. One of my favorite parts was when I got the water in the house. I had to dig a trench outside to dig the water line out. And I started digging this trench, and I was in the wrong spot. I got 1 foot down all the way across when I realized the trench should have been 5 feet over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But I stopped and I said, okay, well, let me shuffle on over 5 feet over. And I dug out the trench where it was supposed to go. And at the time, it was very symbolic of my life, which is my relationship. I was putting in all this effort all in the wrong place. And there's only so much you can do except for to stop yourself and go, you know what? Let me get to myself to the right place, 5 feet over, and let me dig in there. And that's what I did in my life and in this house. And I also realized that trench, the wrong trench that was there, it's not going to go away until you fill it. So for me, it's okay, well, that's my healing. That's healing the all that hurt. And it just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, but that old hole is filled, and now I have water running in my house.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
So your house now, you call it an open floor plan.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's because you've taken it down to the studs.
Yes.
Right? opened it up, and I presume you're doing all new systems in the house and everything, right?
Yes. In fact, because of, I didn't have any money starting this whole process, you really have to kind of get a little creative on things. And I remember starting with the house, I said, I'm not going to do electrical and I'm not going to do plumbing, you know. And now all of a sudden I'm actually learning electrical.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that.
Yeah.
You know, I've got my little book and YouTube and everything. I've got some electricians that I call up and ask about questions, you know, make sure I'm doing it right. But I'm doing it.
That's so cool. And then you talked about your bathroom. You said the bathroom is maybe it's on a sign of growth.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it's the first room that's kind of coming together that has drywall. I just mudded it the other day. In fact, I think I have some mud on me right now, like some residuals. But I've got a bathtub. I've got a toilet. You know, I've got a sink. It's, for me, those are things that people, I feel like, kind of take for granted.
Yeah.
You know, but I lived without it for so long since moving out here.
Yeah.
That those are the little things that I appreciate most.
Because up until, I mean, are you still living in the trailer?
No.
Okay.
No.
Are you living somewhere else now?
So
Okay.
I did have to sell the trailer. Unfortunately, there was some safety concerns.
Okay.
You know, with the ex did come out of jail, and
Oh, okay.
and there was some kind of concerns along the way. The best thing I ever did for myself was I took the risk and I sold that trailer.
Okay.
And I made myself a safety plan, and got me some security cameras, changed the locks, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So you're still working on that. You're doing all the work on the house.
Yes.
Did you know how to do, I mean, you know, you talked about YouTube and books and things like that, but did you have any experience in doing anything like this before?
A little bit.
Okay.
Very, very little bit. Growing up, you know, like my mom built a shed once in the backyard.
Okay.
I helped with that. You know, just little tiny projects. This is everything that I've learned just on a grander scale.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a learning curve with all of it.
Yeah. So you're learning a lot of this from scratch,
Yes.
and you're figuring out like electrical, plumbing. You're figuring out how to demo a house if you took all the drywall, which I'm guessing is because I've done a little bit of work on houses. Most of them are plaster. Did this one have plaster in it when
Yes.
you tore the walls out?
Lath and plaster.
So it's so hard to deal with. And so because you don't even, when you get the plaster out, then you got to get the lath. And then the lath, usually it's got nails left in the studs and you got to go, did you have to do all that?
Yes. But you know what? The great thing about the demo side of things is that's like the early stages. That's the first thing
Yeah.
that you do. And for me, I had so much pent up anger and resentment and everything that was going on in my personal life that demo was so liberating.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure that felt like you were getting some frustrations out or getting some revenge on plaster.
Yes, definitely. But it was just it's just another tool. You know, it's just another tool in my toolbox on how to cope with things. That house, you know, it let me tear down those walls, you know, and let me get that anger out that I needed to. I needed that for my own healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, well, I'm curious because you mentioned about building a shed in it. What was California you like? Were you this person still, or tell me a little bit about that person?
I would say I will always be Luci.
Yeah.
You know, I've been through some pretty incredible moments in my life, and my character itself has never changed. You know, I'm still very hardworking. I'm still very focused. I have never cared about gender boundaries, gender lines. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, I'm doing a man's job. So the core of me has never really changed. I've always been myself. However, with that being said, growing up, I was a little bit more shy and a little more timid. And, you know, I had a lot of insecurities because I was a big girl. I was, you know, plus size. And so there were some things that I was just not quite ready to handle yet, I guess.
Yeah.
Coming out here, I'm more outspoken. I'm more confident in who I am as a woman. And so that's evolved into such a beautiful, amazing thing.
Do you feel that it feels like that as you work on the house, you've also developed a lot of that confidence and that sense of empowerment.
Yes.
Of being able to do something that I think, admit it, like that you look at it seems like a daunting task. It seems like something that would, under the best of circumstances, would be hard to do. Has that contributed to your growth, you feel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, like, never in a million years did I think that I was going to have to remodel a house with my own two hands by myself.
Yeah.
You know, it is a daunting task. And it's still a little overwhelming at times. But I like the challenge of it. I take pride in going, you know what? This is hard. This is really, really hard. Let me see if I can do it. Mm-hmm. That's a really cool moment, you know?
Yeah.
And then afterwards be like, I did that.
Yeah.
You know?
That was one of my favorite lines from your Talk 20 when you I think you ended with it and said, I did that.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that phrase means to you?
It's really pride. And I really want to see other people kind of feel the same way. You know, we're kind of taught to be a little humble, but at times the feeling of overcoming something that you didn't think you could achieve, that feeling, embrace it. Mm-hmm. Proudly saying, I did that. You know, that's giving me the credit that, like, all that hard work that I did is worth it. Yeah. You know, I'm alive today to tell this story and sit with you. Yeah. I'm so proud of that.
Especially when you consider where you were, like that you were at a place where, I mean, don't know there's a point where you don't know that you're still here.
Yeah.
Right. Based on the circumstances. Tell me a little bit. Well, I'll back up. You said people, we're all taught to kind of be humble, particularly in the Midwest. We love being humble in the Midwest. And we're Kansas nice, all of those things. But you talked to me earlier about sort of what you want other people to take away from this story, and how you hope they feel about it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think I really want people to embrace themselves and to love themselves and find confidence in themselves. I think being humble is important to a certain extent, but also being able to feel confident is also important. To have hold your head up high and say, I did that, mm-hmm. You know, just especially with women, we have a lot of self-confidence. We're always picking at ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I hope that my confidence in myself and how I shine bright as a woman, as an individual, I hope that other women feel the same. I want them to be able to stand up tall and straight and love themselves and feel confident in themselves too.
Why do you think that's that sense of being comfortable with ourselves and being confident in ourselves is hard in general, but even harder for women?
I think there's just a lot of negative self-talk. You know, we're not conditioned to maybe be proud of ourselves all the time. You know, there's a lot of keeping your head down. I don't think it does anything good for society to do that. Mm-hmm.
It certainly creates it feels like it creates a lot of opportunities for people to feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. And there's enough of that negativity out there already. You know, the world is a better place when you smile. Mm-hmm. And not like that fake smile. I know that fake smile. I'm bipolar. Like, there's days where I'm feeling bad and I just have a fake smile. Yeah. But I'm talking about genuine happiness, truly finding that within yourself. the world is a better place when people start finding their own peace and their own happiness. And that's what I would like to help people do.
Yeah, and part of the way you're doing that, or that you hope to do it, is through the work on this house, and then sharing that information through interviews like this, and through your YouTube channel and your social media outlets.
Exactly.
Right.
The house is just, I believe actions speak louder than words. So I can sit here and talk to you about positivity all day long, but it doesn't mean anything if I haven't lived it, if I haven't gone through what I've gone through to get to where I'm at today. You know, so working on this house is my action, my proof that it's possible. You know, and making YouTube videos, that's more proof in that and more encouragement for others. I hope that these podcasts, Talk 20, you know, I hope I come up with also more opportunities to be out there to actually help people outside of just YouTube and working on my house.
Yeah. You've been in town for about 2 years now,
Yes.
right? How do you feel like you're a part of the community? Do you feel welcomed here? Tell me about that part of the experience, because it's got to be a little bit of culture shock coming from Oakland, California to Hutchinson, Kansas.
Just a little bit.
A little bit?
Just a little bit. It is a little culture shock. I feel like I am slowly being welcomed in the community. I feel like this is kind of my baby steps out to venturing to get to know like more opportunities, more resources, more things that are available out here in Hutch. So I guess kind of like the baby steps, or I'm exploring still. You know, my whole life, or not my whole life, but the first year, I think, or year and a half of living in Hutch was literally just the size of my property.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just now being able to step out of my comfort zone to do all these wonderful things and explore.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Hutch has to offer, and I'm hoping that somewhere in this Hutchinson community, they can find a place for me to be able to help.
Yeah. Do you have any passions in areas that you do want to help?
I would like to help more in the mental health field.
Okay.
I did go out and get my peer support certificate. Hopefully that will kind of get me somewhere, you know. But I've always said all I need is just one opportunity.
Yeah.
Just give me an opportunity and watch me thrive.
Yeah.
Watch me run with it.
Well, and you've demonstrated what you can do, even with improbable odds, like with the house and what you're doing there.
Yeah.
So that seems like there's a correlation between that the house really is a kind of reflective of your feelings about your ability, and that those two things are working almost like you're working together.
Yes.
You and the house.
Yes, we are.
So tell me, thinking ahead, what kind of goals do you have for the house? What does this house look like when you're done? Do you have a timeline that you're trying to meet? Tell me, like, what do we see in this house 10 years from now?
Ooh, 10 years from now.
Or 5 years, or whatever you think. But if I'm driving by this house 10 years from now, what is there? Are you still there? Is the house, like, fantastic? Is it done? Have you sold it and made money off of it? Tell me what you think there.
I don't know if I'd ever want to sell that house.
It feels like you're pretty bonded to it.
I am very bonded to it. You know, there's so much that could happen in 5 years. What I'll say this is, and I don't have a deadline either about how long it will take me to work on the house, but I will continue to work on that house until it's healed. And that house will become a home, either to me or to somebody else. It's kind of like a duplex situation, so there's upstairs, downstairs type of thing. So hopefully one day I'll be able to get the upstairs rented. But I hope that when I do get to that point, either just to rent the upstairs, or if I did ever decide to rent out both, I would want it to be to somebody who would need it, that would help them in their lives, not just a random person, but to give somebody else an opportunity to thrive. That house deserves it, and I would love to find people that would use it for good too.
Yeah. And then I would ask the same question about you. What are you doing in 5 or 10 years? Are you Do you have other projects that you want to work on, other interests that you hope to pursue? Are you still in Hutch? I know that things can change,
Yes.
but it gives me a little bit of insight into your thought.
I love Hutch. And I feel like as of now, this is going to be my home. Now that I'm getting in the groove of things in the community, it may not be perfect always, but it is a beautiful place, and I'm grateful to have landed here. So I see myself making this my long-term home.
Oh, good.
Definitely.
I always like to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just hope that I can find some type of opportunity or career that really, where I can do good out here. And once I can get settled in something like that and get that momentum going, just to continue with it, to continue to help people is really what I want to see.
Yeah. You mentioned the peer support certificate. Are you hoping to work in that field?
Yes.
Okay.
That's where the goal is.
Yeah.
I have a lot of background in, being bipolar, and I feel like my whole story could really help others. And also I'm very patient with other people. I've helped mentor people along the way in my life as well. So I have a lot of history and background in it. And I'm hoping that Hutch can use that as a resource, can use me as a resource.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we could. I mean, we can, in this community, like all communities and across the state, we have a desperate need to increase our capacity in the mental health field, that we have way more need for mental health services than we have the ability to deliver. And we have more and more people struggling with, mental illnesses that we need to put a lot of effort and energy into it. So I'm hopeful that you can find something in that too, because we could certainly use that level of compassion. Table saw, miter saw. What power tools did you use that you never thought you'd be using?
Oh my goodness, all of them. I have to say, I know we're not sponsored by Ryobi, but damn those Ryobi tools, they are the best. I use them all.
Really?
Yeah. I will say the table saw, I get scared of anything with a running blade on it. And my house, when I bought it, had a table saw in the garage. And there's actually a whole video on YouTube of me figuring out how to use this table saw, because I knew nothing about it. So it's like me looking at it, trying to figure out how it works, plugging it in, taking my first piece of wood, just, running it through. And that was a challenge. I was scared to death of it. But once I got it going, oh yeah, it was on from there. I ended up making some door jams.
Oh yeah.
That day. So.
Well, because it's another thing about, it's good you took it all the way down, but if you're ever remodeling a house and you're dealing with lath and plaster, then the original studs are thicker than the studs are today.
Yes.
And then the lath adds another 3/8 of an inch onto that. So if you're trying to work around lath and plaster, it's a mess, isn't it?
It's a whole nightmare.
Yeah.
All right, because none of the measurements ever add up nicely. Yep. It throws everything off.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of patience and a really good tape measure.
That's good. So you know exactly what you need to do there. Well, I think I was going to ask you a little bit about Hutch. What have you gone out to explore in Hutch?
Well, as far as resources that I found out here throughout my journey, I will say Bright House was a huge resource that I used to help me get through what I was going through. New Beginnings out here, they actually helped donate some stuff for my house.
Oh, wow.
They let me walk through their warehouse, and I got a bathtub from them and a little vanity thing. So there are some great resources out here that help people in need like myself.
Yeah.
So there's that. I've also had a lot of fun out here. They had midget wrestling over at the state fair last week. That was pretty cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw that it was there, or I think I saw like an ad on Facebook or something like that.
Yeah. And then they even had State Fair had a Pride Festival.
Uh-huh.
And that was really awesome to see, especially from California, where we're a lot more liberal,
Yeah.
you know? So to see that kind of community come out here, and I was happy that I was out there to support that. And then also there's a pretty cool biker community out here with Salt City Cycle.
Salt City Cycles, yeah.
Yeah, they have, was their third Thursday or bike nights.
Uh-huh.
They actually hired me to build a bar for their Mayhem Biker Bash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so they handed me a whole bunch of pallets and threw me in a warehouse and said, see what you can build. And that was actually a really cool moment, because then I got to take all the tools from my house and build something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I made a video of that too, and that was a lot of fun, building a bar and then being able to see that out in the community being used. Yeah. That was another moment of I did that.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah, so far I've experienced a little bit, but I can't wait to discover so much more. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. And like you said, you've been here 2 years, but it's really been less than a year that you've been able to really venture out.
Yeah.
Because you've kind of been in crisis mode, for the first part of your time here, right? On your individual. Yeah.
And a lot of isolation too. You know, there was a lot of, after everything had happened, you know, there's like a lot of healing. There's a lot of things that I had to overcome and still work on. A lot of public anxiety, not feeling like I fit in, kind of feeling a little weird. So yeah, I think I've really kind of come out of my shell a little bit as far as exploring Hutch more in the last, I don't know, about 6 to 8 months, I think.
Yeah. Do you still feel that a little bit sometimes? A little bit like, oh, maybe I don't. And is that from, what do you think the root of that is? No,
actually, I think now Talk 20 really helped me a lot with that, because I went from staying in my property to talking in front of, I think it was like 250 people. I think that was there. You know, so that's kind of a change all in itself, where you're just standing there talking in front of everybody. But I've learned that when I'm confident in myself, it doesn't really matter about what other people think.
Yeah.
I will always be Luci. You can't ever change that, you know? And so, but I've noticed that people respond well to me.
Yeah.
There's people that really like me and like my personality and what I have to offer. And if there's people that maybe are haters, well, then they're haters.
Yeah. And that's more their problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's their issue. It doesn't impede on my little happy bubble, you know?
Yeah.
I'm proud that I built myself a good life. I deserve that. I deserve that happiness. And I'm so determined to make sure that I protect that, you know? Yeah,
there's a lot. It's so important to protect that, right? To not let other people intrude on that feeling of like that you can do it, that you've done it and you can do it.
Yeah. My favorite saying that I've been saying a lot is water off a duck's back, you know, because really it's like what other people have to say. If you really sit down and think about it, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect your bills. It doesn't affect what you've got going in your life. And if that's the truth, it's not affecting you, well, then leave it to me. They're just words.
Yeah.
Consider the source anyways. Do they really matter?
What kind of feedback did you get after Talk 20?
I had a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. And in fact, I actually cried about this the other day, because I called my dad, and he's like, the Talk 20 presentation is also on YouTube on their own channel.
Yeah.
And it's gotten out to California. Northern California, I've become quite popular.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with the words that I had to say. And people are very inspired by me and my journey. And so I cried. I cried like a baby, thinking that I'm helping change people for the better. You know, that it's just you can't see it. I couldn't see that I'm actually changing people or I'm helping people. You know, it's not like you wake up, there's like 20 people in your room, you know, like that you change. You don't know, you don't see it.
Yeah.
But my dad explaining to me that what I'm doing is important, is impactful. It hit me. It hit me emotionally and I just cried. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm young. I'm 33. Just imagine what else I can do. I'm so excited about it.
There's so much going forward that you can do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you came in and shared your story with me today. And tell people, if they want to follow your YouTube channel, tell them how to do that.
Yes. So if you want to follow me on, I have a Facebook page and YouTube. It is Lucky_Luci91. And it's Luci spelled Luci. Yep, with an I.
Well, keep at it. It was great visiting with you today, and it's been great meeting you. And I really appreciate all the energy that you're bringing, both here and to the home and to Hutchinson. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank a few of the people who've helped make That Podcast in Hutch possible. My son Mitchell Probst wrote and recorded the music for the show. Jenny Brigette put together some great graphics and promotional art. And Chris Acker helps overcome my mistakes to produce a great sounding product every episode. That Podcast in Hutch is made possible through a collaboration between the Hutchinson Arts and Culture Collective and Salt City Sound. They're working to bring resources and infrastructure to support art, music, and storytelling in our community. If you have an idea for your own podcast, reach out to them at podcasts@saltcitysound.net. If you enjoy That Podcast in Hutch, be sure to subscribe and share it with all your friends. You can also help support this production by subscribing to thatguyinhutch.substack.com or by emailing me at thatguyinhutch@gmail.com to learn about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join us again next week.
A Salt City Sound production.